So why do people cheat?
Yeah, well, I think there's a host of reasons, but the most devastating types of infidelity are sexual and technological.
Like doesn't feel
They
when
don't
they
feel badly for it, right? And they think that they deserve to do that. They should have access to other people.
So at what point is it considered infidelity? So why do people cheat?
Yeah, well, I think there's a host of reasons, but it's really where people get to that they cheat. And it's usually over time in a relationship. One or both of them are not feeding each other, and people start living parallel lives. And one starts getting further and further away. And often that one that's drifting further and further away, all of a sudden there can be some kind of poacher. This is what often happens. There's like a mate poacher. And this other person, starts talking to them about their relationship. Like they're both sharing about their relationship. And then this poacher is telling this person how amazing they are. And all of a sudden they're like, ooh, wow, this feels good. I like this attention. My spouse, this is how my spouse used to make me feel. And then they start...
But they're not getting it from their spouse
They're not getting it
anymore.
from the spouse, and they start analyzing their relationship too. And they're like, wait a minute. I'm so unhappy. And they start having a very negative view about their partner because they're being fed by this other person. And then a friendship develops, and then bam, often something physical does, and then it takes on a life of its own. Now, I mean, there's lots of reasons why people get to that point though too, and it can be from just general incompatibility or different crises they're having, or specific personality traits that a person has, from like having borderline or narcissistic, or even having like some odd attachment styles.
Well, at what point do you know that this is happening? Like at what point is it cheating? At what point is it considered infidelity?
Well, psychologists talk about there's 4 types of infidelity. You have physical, emotional, technological, and solitary. Okay.
Yeah.
And the sexual.
Solitary?
Well, the solitary is like fantasizing by yourself, masturbating.
Fantasizing about the person?
No, I mean, it could be, I guess, about the partner, but it's like something you're doing alone that the partner is not aware of.
Okay. And then the emotional that's more like women have more emotional affairs?
Yeah, I mean, they
where
typically
men
do.
have more physical affairs. Is that true?
Well, I mean, obviously there's like somebody on the other end, right?
Oh, yeah.
But typically, yes. I mean, women are usually seeking more of an emotional affair, and men typically a sexual affair. But certainly affairs often start out as emotional, and then technological affairs are when you're doing something online and you're like not on Ashley Madison, but you're on,
Even like on Instagram, like DMing old friends.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's often how these relationships begin. Somebody from high school reaches out to you on Facebook, for people in our generation, and it kind of kicks up a friendship, and then it's very rewarding to all of a sudden have a new message, waiting for you. And then all of a sudden they're like talking about their current relationship, their current marriage, and what they're unhappy with, and how, oh, you were the one that got away. And then all of a sudden they're sending each other pictures, and all of a sudden a secret rendezvous, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I hear the story over and over and over again.
Right.
So, but I mean, technological infidelity is also related to people that go to OnlyFans. Oh, people go to OnlyFans and they start having a relationship with like not a porn star, somebody that's doing, they go and visit and they do the, sexual things for them. But the most devastating types of infidelity are sexual and technological. Okay, the most damaging.
Technological more than emotional?
It is, because what happens afterwards? Well, because with technology, there's usually some kind of sexual thing, because you're sending pictures of yourself and maybe finally hooking up with the person. And then because we use this technology, it's so pervasive that it's always such a major trigger for the one that's been cheated on. Like, you're on your phone, or what are you doing?
Right.
You're on your computer. So it's
It's like you can never get away from it.
It's really hard to recover from that.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at if we're looking at different types of infidelity, who does it? What's the greatest impact? For men, generally speaking, sexual infidelity hurts them the most. Like if you were
woman is
unfaithful,
if the wife
sexually,
cheats,
it is
sexually.
It is devastating, and this is part of our evolutionary makeup. But for women, emotional infidelity is the most hurtful.
If
even
their
though you guys
husband is out.
yes, having an emotional affair with someone. But again, that's how most of these relationships begin, is emotional. But from an evolutionary perspective, because with an emotional affair, it's like you're taking away those resources. Like an emotional affair is somebody's taking away those resources. And then in a sexual affair, somebody's taking away those sexual resources from the relationship.
So who's more likely to cheat, men or women?
Wow. So there's always somebody on the receiving end, but
right. So then it's,
it's more likely for men to cheat, but then you're thinking, but there's always
to
somebody on the other end.
The cheating, or but there's always
cheat.
somebody on the other end. So for every man,
but what men use prostitutes, men use like other dating services more than women. So men are more likely to have one night stands and do those things, and sometimes it could be with the same women. So, but the rates of infidelity for men is about 40 to 50%. For women, it's about 30 to 40%.
Is the old saying, once a cheater, always a cheater? Is that a thing?
Well, for different types of people. So if somebody's a serial cheater, then yes. And usually there's some kind of personality dysfunction where, they're...
What makes a serial cheater?
Oh, wow. Somebody that cheats multiple times.
No, but what makes them, as far as personality-wise goes? Like, what would be the personality profile of a serial cheater? Because I feel like at that point, everybody makes mistakes in life, and everybody, does things that they are... ashamed of in their life, and they learn from it and, move on. I'm not saying that it's excusable behavior, but what I'm saying is everybody in life makes mistakes and does things that are regrettable. But a serial cheater, it's like that is, they're not learning from that, and they're hurting people along the way every single time. And so like, what is the personality profile of somebody who's a serial cheater?
Yeah. So, it's usually somebody that has narcissistic traits, antisocial personality traits. That's not introversion, but somebody that doesn't have empathy, somebody that's just out to kind of exploiting people.
Like doesn't feel when
they don't feel badly for it, right? And they think that they deserve to do that. They should have access to other people.
So are they fixable?
Well, I think sometimes they are if they're learning about how much damage they're doing, but there's probably something, there's been some studies about like who cheats too, and it can be like men that have too high of testosterone or men that have too low of oxytocin, which is a pair bonding neurotransmitter. So where these people just have trouble making attachments or having attachments with people, and then they're not feeling badly about what they do. So, there are certain types of people that do cheat and become serial cheaters. But, and then the other aspect of this is, it's been interesting, and this is not blaming a victim, but if you're more likely, if you've been cheated on in a prior relationship, you're more likely to get cheated on again.
Why is that?
Well, it's because we often create a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you start doubting and you have trust issues in your relationship because you think it's going to happen again,
well, then
you recreate that situation.
Maybe not recreate it, but you're so nervous about it happening that you then...
Well, you cause a lot of insecurity in the relationship, and the other person's questioning the relationship.
Yes, right.
Rather than creating stability. So, if that's you, it's important to kind of get through that and figure out what went wrong in the relationship and fix it so it doesn't happen again.
Right. Yeah. So when you've been cheated on and then you move into the next relationship, and what are you actually doing that's then causing more problems? And then how do you stop yourself from doing that?
Yeah, that's true. So you got to work on your sense of insecurity, because that is destabilizing in the relationship. So that means you're not panicking when the person is going out with their friends or is leaving you out of something or wants some free time, or they want some privacy on their phone. Like you can't be grabbing their phone, sneaking around behind their back because you're doubting them and you need to verify that they're trustworthy. So you need to make sure you're picking the best person too, somebody that's compatible with you.
Right.
And then if you are not able to control yourself, you need to go maybe talk to somebody professionally and get some help and learn some techniques to
So you don't
calm
sabotage that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
and a relationship is all part of negotiating. So in the beginning, you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. And just because somebody's pushing back a little bit at the front end, it doesn't mean they're being unfaithful.
What if your friend is cheating?
Yeah.
What do you do in that instance?
Well, I would be talking to my friend about not cheating and figure out how they got into this mess and help them get out of this mess. So, the problem is too, because even it's a risk factor when your friend is cheating. I mean, you find this with middle-aged people when all of a sudden they start getting divorced. But it often starts with somebody will have an affair, and then the norms change, and then somebody else will be like, oh, I guess that's not so bad. Maybe I should do that.
Everybody ends up divorced in your friend group.
Yeah, because they're all having affairs and cheating and divorcing. So, that's certainly a risk factor. But I have so many interesting stories. The stories, and I'm not identifying anyone because the stories seem to repeat themselves over and over again. But who do people have affairs with? And it's usually people that they interact with so frequently. And it can be couples, right, that are together, and the husband and wife will hook up, or the wife and husband hook up, or
from different
you hook up with your wife's best friend, or even within families, like
your wife's sister
or brother. And these things are it's so devastating, right?
For the whole family.
So many relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, even you think about a best friend or in a family. But again, I'm not identifying. That's who you're with. That's who you're most likely to have an affair with, or somebody at work, that you work closely with.
Right.
Because we're humans.
It's so
the
cliche.
more and more interaction, but it happens over and over again. Same story over and over again.
Can a relationship be restored after an affair?
Wow. I mean, it's, so it certainly can. Certainly.
I mean, you see a lot of people. You help a lot of people post-affair.
We do lots of affair. We do a lot of affair work here.
So how does that
Which is scary because it's it helps you recognize how commonplace it is, right? But yeah, I mean, so the research says about 65 to 75% of couples can get better and restore where they were and even get to a better place with the proper help.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that you would definitely want to go see somebody to get through. It's not something you really can do in a healthy way on your own because you need some actual tools. You got to probably go back to why the affair started and work on all of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest thing to address, though.
And then the why, and then also the how to move forward and how to navigate your new life now that's happened. Because I know that from what you've talked about before, there's all sorts of new strategies that have to be put in place, like total transparency and all of those things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can. I want to backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
Though. Because often men, especially, will often say, if my wife ever did that, I could never take her back, right? But the reality is that many husbands work through an affair, their wives having an affair, okay? And then many times, too, people come a year or 2 years later after an affair was discovered, but it is still doing so much damage in the relationship because without professional help, they're not able to navigate it, okay? So even 2 years later, they show up. And I'm still struggling I can't get these visions out of my mind. Okay. Okay. But
so what are the steps to?
Well, I mean, so first of all, I mean, there's a decision too with a couple that nobody has to make up their mind about what we're doing in the future.
Okay.
Okay. Because people.
So is that what you do first?
Often, yeah. I mean, you often will I gotta know what to do. How can I love this person again? Or even somebody may be thinking, I don't know if I can be faithful to this person anymore. But there's got to be an agreement that we just don't know what we're going to do yet. We're in an exploratory phase. Okay. And that settles things down because, we want certainty though. Like, is this going to work? Well, we don't know, but it's okay to just
not know right now.
And we're going to figure this out. And then the affair has to end. Like, you can't work through it. You can't work through infidelity if the affair is continuing.
Right. Or if there's any contact still with the other person.
So there's got to be.
But what if it, like you said, what if it's with somebody who's like your sister or with your
with
his
gets
secretary?
That gets managed later because I mean these like jobs change, people move their homes because sometimes it's the next door neighbor, right? I mean it's anybody that's in close, that you're
okay. So the affair has to end right away. Obviously,
the affair has to end. There's got to be total transparency. So, and this doesn't mean like every intimate detail about things that have happened, but like how it began, how frequently, how it occurred.
If the person that's been cheated on wants to know that stuff, is it healthy to know that stuff?
It is healthy to know it without knowing so much detail because often, especially men, because we're so visual, you will like relive all of those things in your mind and you won't be able to let those thoughts go. But that happens for some women too. But what I liken this for couples is, so like for the person on the receiving end, like you have comfort in your life when you have certainty, and your life is like a jigsaw puzzle, and your partner has just like destroyed this jigsaw puzzle and thrown the pieces everywhere. And until you have a map of how they are, who they are, what happened, you feel uncertainty and fear, right? And anxiety because you don't know if that person's going to show up. Is my spouse going to leave me? Am I going to run? Did they have an affair with somebody else? Like all of a sudden I don't know this person. So the person that committed the infidelity has to give the person all of those puzzle pieces. And so the puzzle can be put together, and then, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with. Right? So there are no ghosts, no surprises. And then the hardest part, the person that has an affair often will do all this damage control as they're trying to repair. Like, ooh, I can't share that information because it's going to devastate my spouse.
So then they withhold that information.
They withhold it. But then like every 2 weeks, more stuff seeps out, again and again and again. And it's like
rehashing the affair again.
And I understand in the beginning, everything's not going to come out, but at least by a few weeks, all that stuff needs to be laid out on the table.
The full story needs to be.
I mean, I've had men that come to see me. They're like almost throwing up in my office, running to the restroom. And you can hear them throwing up. I mean, it's just so gut-wrenching.
Right.
But then it's done. Like we've gone through the worst pieces.
Right.
So, but then you start moving forward. And if people have kids, you have to maintain daily rituals and make sure lives are not disrupted.
Oh, that's another thing.
As you're working through this.
Like, do the kids know?
No, you don't tell your kids.
You don't tell your kids. It's not their business.
Even your teenage kids. This is between the two of you.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And then you do need to be talking about this though. But you don't need to have collateral damage. So you spend about 30 minutes a day. Like that's when the questions, you get absorbed in it. You take a walk, you cry, you throw snot. I mean, all the stuff.
Right. You do the stuff.
And then you get back to your life. Okay.
Okay.
And save it because you can't have, you gotta keep moving forward and live your life and not have other problems. I mean, if you need more than 30 minutes a day, you can certainly have that. But
side note here, question. What about when like the person who cheated is like upset that they think the other person, it's like too much. Like I've told you, I've said I'm sorry. Like, isn't that they are not? Yeah.
There's got to be an expectation that you're going to have thousands of that you're going to have to make 1,000 apologies,
right,
at least.
Right.
And the person's going to be struggling for the next couple of years, and especially the next 6 months. So they're going to have a tough time, and you better be moving toward them, hugging them, holding them, apologizing, giving them reassurance. Actually
feeling that
But
remorse.
never say, you're not over this yet? I mean, we've already been down this road. We've talked about it. I'm being faithful. I mean, you've destroyed their total sense of security. They
Right.
thought they knew you. They don't even know who you are.
Right.
So
The jigsaw
it's your
puzzle.
job.
You've destroyed
it's
the
your
jigsaw.
job to prove to them that everything's okay. Now, the other thing that can't happen, that happens all the time, people stay up till 5 o'clock in the morning because the person that
Has been cheated
is
on.
on the receiving end is like, we got to talk, and they're like asking all these questions and trying to put all the pieces together, and the other person's not helping them, and then nobody's getting any sleep every night. So you can't have those late night discussions. You gotta let each other sleep
needs
and
to be in
kind
a
of
controlled
move forward. But this is why you need some professional assistance too to kind of work through
I
this.
agree.
And then after there's some peace of mind a little bit, after a couple months, then you start delving into what happened, what led to this, why did we have this kind of separation?
Right.
Or, sometimes though people are just minding their own business, happily married, and then there's some mate poacher that comes in and just totally manipulates one of the partners and destroys the relationship. I mean, there are people
that does happen.
that happens.
Where
People
there's
are-
happy marriages
There's just some
and then
total
something
asshole that comes in and destroys their family. I mean,
probably
like kind of a sociopath.
yeah, right.
And they just really like love bombing somebody. I mean, it's like weird, and the other person kind of feels weird about it happening, doesn't want to tell their spouse, because it feels kind of good, even though they're happy.
Right.
So it's just, this is what you got to have an open line of communication all the time, and always be sharing what's happening, and make sure you're connected too, like really connected. So you can both say, hey, this person is being weird. They're doing all this stuff. So, but you want professional help. So so you have like a third person, and there's some guidance.
Yeah.
And where there's no judgment, where nobody's talking about sin.
Right.
And things of that nature. But, you're both moving forward, and the pursuit is to have a new relationship.
Yeah.
Because people can have an enhanced and even better relationship. I mean, we get letters from people
Yes.
where there's been infidelity years
And
later, and they
actually-
say, thank you. I never imagined my relationship being this
Would
good.
be better.
My marriage being this good. That was
Yes.
such a difficult time in my life.
Yes.
Right?
That's true.
So
So-
really it can be a beautiful thing, even though it is devastating.
Yes.
Yeah, it's terrible.
How are most people caught?
Oh, most people are caught on the phone or the tablet. I mean, it's off. So it used to be, I think people have gotten better about this, but it used to be where, people had like one iPhone account, one Apple account.
Or one
So-
iCloud account or
so the
whatever,
kids-
and then
kids
the
had-
tablet, they can
the
see
kids
the
had
text.
the tablet, and all of a sudden something pops up. There's like a message from his girlfriend, right, or her boyfriend on there, and the kid's like confused and shows it to the parent. Or like, inappropriate pictures start showing up in front of the kid while the kid's watching the Wiggles or something,
Yeah.
But now it's suspiciousness, usually when somebody's seeing their partner is being very secretive.
Acting different
Yeah.
with their phone.
Yeah. And it's interesting because men and women, we both have evolved different radars for detecting infidelity. And men are better at detecting sexual infidelity, and women are better at detecting emotional infidelity.
Right.
And then the other piece is like we've got to understand about jealousy, because this is like infidelity is dangerous. I mean, this is where it is the biggest driver of jealousy and violence between men and women. Because if you think about when there's domestic violence or suicide or like murder-suicide, there usually is something to do with jealousy,
Right, infidelity.
perceived infidelity. I mean, this is where stalking comes from. Like somebody's
Right.
cheating, they're doing something.
Yeah.
Right? They're waiting outside of somebody's
major,
apartment.
yeah.
There's some other guy, going to the apartment. People kill each other and themselves over sexual jealousy, right? I mean, you're like playing with fire. So,
Well, here's have you ever had a couple who have come to see you, where it was more of an emotional affair? It never ever turned physical. Does that happen?
yeah, it happens a lot.
And it is considered an affair an actual affair?
Well, so
Or is it easier to get past?
Yeah,
than
I mean, it is easier to get past.
for both
More
people?
men would say that's not infidelity, whereas women would, even experiencing that, or if they've been the subject of it, they would say that like their husband had an emotional affair. They would see that as cheating. But it is easier to manage because it's easier to recover from, because it doesn't have the same impact as a sexual affair. However,
For men and women?
well, I mean, for women, it
For
has
both.
a greater impact. But I'm thinking how to answer this. I mean, because the research is kind of mixed about emotional. Like, it depends on what you're looking at, but in general, it's more hurtful for men when there's a sexual affair versus for women an emotional affair. But it seems that, I'm sorry, women are better at working through affairs when they're the recipient than men are, though, in general.
Women are better at recovering from an affair than men are?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
In general.
So when we're speaking, going back to the emotional affair, like what constitutes an emotional affair? What are the parameters of that?
Well,
Like, what is it?
I mean, there are emotional affairs at all levels, but it's when we are not talking to our spouse, but we're seeking the comfort of someone that we also would be sexually intimate with, but we're not. We at least have that boundary, but we're finding comfort and connection, and we are daydreaming about that person, getting excited when they text us back.
Okay.
That constitutes an affair, or it's leading in that direction.
Okay.
But it is certainly devastating. And the trouble with an emotional affair is that because it's not sexual, sometimes it can get downplayed, and it's still hard to stop too, because you're being fed by this person. But the danger is that it can lead to physical affair. But the interesting thing is, like, other reasons that people have affairs, though, back to incompatibility, like many people have affairs to have an exit affair. Where like the relationship is terrible.
And they don't want to recover the relationship?
It's like at more of an unconscious level, but it was like they are sabotaging their relationship or putting enough distance between themselves and their current relationship, and they have an exit affair because they never end up with the person, or rarely end up with the person, but it breaks up their marriage.
Well, that's what
it's kind of like the final straw.
And then that was going to be my next question: is how many affairs where they're like, I found my soulmate. This person is my soulmate that I'm having the affair with, and then they go through with a divorce with their spouse. How many of those end up actually together? Like, what is the rate of that?
Yeah, and I think I've looked. It's been a while since looking at it, but I think about 20 to 30% of those relationships are actually successful. And I've seen people people that have had an affair that have come to
and they're with their
their affair partner, and some of them have kids and very, very happy lives, but there's less likelihood of those relationships to be
making
successful.
Right.
So, but something very interesting, like the difference between men and women in terms of, like why they have affairs. One reason that women specifically have affairs is to mate switch, like to mate upgrade.
Like they found somebody better?
Yes. I mean, it's terrible, but that's when they will have an exit affair to mate switch. Not women that are just having an affair, but sometimes they will have an affair to then upgrade. Like if they're having some issues with their current spouse, like they feel like he's just not cutting it, they will have an affair to get an upgrade.
And the person they're having the affair?
Men are typically not that way.
Okay. But the person that the woman's having an affair with, that's not necessarily the upgrade they're looking for.
Correct.
Okay. They're just...
But
then men aren't trying to upgrade.
No. Again, on average. Not always.
This is all averages.
These are all averages.
Right. So why are men generally having affairs? Because their needs aren't being met at home in some way? Either physically, emotionally?
That can be for women also, but men again are, have a greater desire for variety. Okay, I shouldn't say that, even though that's true. That's why we have, 400 million sperm that are released.
You can't say that.
And you have an egg.
You can't say that.
Okay. Is it still fun? It's filming. Okay. Okay. So why do men?
Well, I know we talked about why people cheat. I mean, they're not being fulfilled at home.
Uh-huh. I mean, men are more likely to be unfaithful. They are wired differently. There's no excuse, but they are wired differently than women. They have different hormones and different wiring, and from an evolutionary perspective.
But we have evolved, so they know better.
But we have evolved, and we have a frontal cortex that inhibits certain behavior.
Right.
But they still have that drive. I mean, this is why more men use pornography than women. I mean,
right.
99% of customers of pornography and prostitution are men. 99% of the customers are men of prostitution and pornography. Okay? So there's a reason that men are seeking variety. But they also cheat for the same reasons that women cheat, where they feel like their needs are not being met, the partner's incompatible, they're being driven apart, or they're slowly pulling apart from the relationship, and they get poached too.